make a video. I wanted to talk about timeline therapy today. Now, for those of you that have heard my story before, I have shared that every modality that I am certified in, I use to heal myself. I fundamentally believe if I'm going to do something on a client, I need to have done it on myself. And it needs to have worked. That's important because I want my clients to get results and I want to change lives and change the world. Easy peasy, you know? So yeah, I've tried over 30 different modalities. There are some great ones out there. I know a lot of them overlap, and by no means am I saying some are better than the other. I'm sharing with you one of the ones that I personally use and has worked for me, and why I think it works, or not I think, why it does work. And that is timeline therapy. Timeline therapy, love timeline therapy. Timeline therapy is interwoven with neurolinguistic programming. And if you don't know neurolinguistic programming, it is basically using language, in my mind, to bypass the conscious mind to get to the unconscious, because I believe that is where the root of a lot of our problems are, right? Is in the unconscious mind, the programming, the beliefs, the systems, the structure, the social constructs, all that stuff which we've been programmed with between the ages of 0 and 7, some say 0 and 9, some say 0 and 12, basically when you were a kid. And even before that, they've proven even in the womb. And I mean, if you have different beliefs, even some believe before that as well. So yeah, I love timeline therapy and I find it so effective working with clients. And here's why. It also changed my life. Timeline therapy, I was able to get rid of the negative emotion of anger. And here's to say, here's a disclaimer. We are meant to feel emotions, okay? Some clients come to me and they're like, I still feel angry when I stub my toe. That's warranted. If your dog dies and you're sad, that's warranted. I'm talking the residual. I'm talking when it doesn't go away. I'm talking when you get up in the morning and you stub your toe and you're angry for the entire day because you stubbed your toe. That is not because you stubbed your toe. That's because you have an open loop of the negative emotion, anger, and it's playing out over and over again. And your unconscious mind is going, we need to address the root cause of this anger. There was an event that did not experience closure, or the loop did not close because of trauma, because it was unresolved, because you couldn't actually understand what was happening. And so this loop is running, and it's still running to the point where you stub your toe, that it's unbearable to handle any kind of negative emotion such as anger. And so just a disclaimer, you are meant to feel negative emotions because they are there to guide us, just like pain. But like I tell many of my pain clients, if it's ongoing, it shouldn't be there, okay? The body can totally replicate itself within 18 months, every single cell. So if you have pain past 18 months, it's probably a psychological, energetic, or a neurological issues going on. So that's my tidbit about that. Same with negative emotions. We are meant to, and that's the other thing, you can feel fear, you can feel sadness, but it shouldn't be lingering and lasting for on and on and on and on and on, especially if you are already addressing it. So, timeline therapy. A lot of people come to me and I know therapists, psychotherapists, us therapists out there love to talk about negative emotions and limiting beliefs. And a lot of people in therapy go after the one limiting belief. I'm not good enough. That's a great limiting belief, okay? Love that one. Love to hit that one hard. I would say 90%, maybe 99%, between 90 and 100% of our issues are dealt in perception of self-love, self-worth, and that whole limiting belief of not good enough. I would say most issues, that is the root cause. However, there's different ways that you can hack at it. There's different ways you can cut it out, pull it out, and deal with it. I like timeline therapy, and here's why. A lot of different therapies go after the one problem. Let's dissect the problem of not being good enough. Let's dissect the person that made you not feel good enough. Let's dissect the limiting belief of not being good enough versus what is the underlying emotion around not good enough? Sadness, grief, what is the emotion? Get to the emotion. What is the main kahuna, the main negative emotion that is causing all these stories to develop? Okay? When someone comes to me and they're like, well, I'm afraid that I'll hurt someone's feelings if I do this, and, or I'm responsible for helping everybody. I'm responsible for healing people. I'm responsible for taking care of my family. And if somebody gets hurt, I'm responsible for that. Or I love the people pleasers out there. I love you guys, but you guys just like feel like you're responsible for everything. And so I have a lot of people come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm responsible. The underlying emotion behind it is really fear and control, I would say. Fear and control. Debatable if control is actually emotion. I think it's the loss of control and just the unknown, really. And it all comes from fear. So we have fear. So I love timeline therapy because instead of going after the event or going after that one limiting belief, why don't we just knock out the emotion? That sounds pretty good. Why don't we just take the charge off of anger so that you still like experience anger in a healthy way, but it doesn't snowball throughout your day? I mean, that would probably fix a lot of problems and wipe out all of the limiting beliefs that go around anger or fear or sadness. So why not go after the actual damn emotion that's causing all of these storylines in our head? Right? And so I love timeline therapy because it really focuses on when did this emotion enter your life where it became a problem and is causing all these other problems. And that is where you go after it. Okay, so we go to the root cause of it. Where was the very first time? Some people like to go to the significant event. When was the first time you felt fear? But when did fear enter in where it became the emotion that became the event? Go after the emotion. So that's why one of the reasons I love timeline therapy. With that, here's the other thing is and some of you can go look up timeline therapy. With timeline therapy, non-mirror image reverse, which is a psychological technique that has been studied for over 67 years, super powerful. That is what is incorporated in timeline therapy. If you're wanting to do the research on, well, how does timeline therapy actually work from a psychological standpoint, you can go look up non-mirror image reverse and Cartesian coordinates as well. Because it's basically taking the language and putting it into a visual form and using the unconscious mind. It's a hypnotic technique. Let me clarify. Timeline therapy is a hypnotic technique, which uses a psychological change work. Okay, so that being said, the other thing I like about timeline therapy is that it allows you on an energetic level to close the loop, not on an energetic level, I should say, but it allows you to close the loop that's going on a neurological level while releasing an energetic charge off the emotion and the emotion. I feel like if you've heard me talk before, health and healing is mind, body, and spirit. And I do work in all areas of those. And so if I can hit something all at once, I'm all for that. Because how many times have you heard me talk about, how is it even yours? Like the negative emotion that you picked up, we're such energetic, biomagnetic, bioelectrical beings that everything has a frequency, everything holds a charge, and how much of it is coming into our field that's not even ours? Ever walk through a grocery store and walk out feeling like shit, and you're like, I felt great, but I feel like I picked up all these stuff. I feel like all this shit is on me. Yeah, it's probably not even yours. Okay, so that's the other thing about timeline therapy is I find there is an energetic component that they realize in that present moment when you're going through the actual technique. Holy shit, this isn't even mine. Wow, I can just let that go and release that off my mind, my soul, and my body. That's another reason I love timeline therapy. So timeline therapy, okay, the other reason I love timeline therapy is because it changes the perspective of the actual event, okay? How many times when you're so caught up in the freaking emotion, do you not realize that it's not a big deal? How many times have you had a girlfriend and been like, oh my God, he texted me 5 minutes late than he said he would. Okay, this is not about texting. This is about like you're wounded. This is about like you're blurred. You're like overreacting because there is a story playing out and it is, triggering you to respond this way. It's not about the texting. It's not about the event. How many times have we perceived something like, I swear she looked at me dirty. I know my mother-in-law was mean to me. I know what she meant by that comment. Okay, but what if she actually didn't mean that? What if we convinced the unconscious mind that it wasn't actually a problem? You probably would respond differently, right? So that's the other thing I like about timeline therapy is, did your teacher really throw the pencil at you when you were 5 and told you weren't good enough? Or did the teacher just ask you to sit down and be quiet? Ooh, that would change the perspective. That would change your entire outlook on life, wouldn't it? Well, what if we program the unconscious mind to review something in a different perspective? What if that's how you saw? For your entire life, you were told that you weren't good enough because of this one situation. What if we could go back and reverse time? What if we could go back and say that actually didn't happen? What would you do? You would respond differently. You totally would. If we said, actually, that wasn't about you. When your baby brother punched you in the face and said you were stupid, maybe that actually didn't happen. How would you respond to all other relationships, especially family? Probably respond differently. That's the other thing about timeline therapy is you can go back and change it. And that totally goes into the whole I'm certified in memory recovery therapy, which kind of goes right into that, is changing the memory. If you change the memory of the actual event, well, did it happen or did it not happen? When you change the memory or the outlook or the viewpoint of where you're coming from, that changes your internal representation of how you view everything in the world. So if you were told from birth that you were an incredible, loving individual and that everything that happened to you had nothing to do with you and that you were just a powerful being, how would you respond differently? That is the power of the mind. And so you can go back and reprogram what happened. You can bring in other situations and see a different viewpoint. Maybe your mom wasn't yelling at you. Maybe she was just disappointed with whatever, the milkman. Who knows? What if it wasn't about you? And here's the thing. A lot of people say, yeah, but what if it was real? It doesn't matter. Everything is illusion. The unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what happened and what really didn't happen, what's happening in real time versus an alternative time. That's the beauty of what is reality? It's what you decide it to be. So what if we decided that it really was a different story? What if we changed the story? What if we changed the rules? You change the game. You see the different outlook. That's why I like timeline therapy. So yeah, super powerful. And I'm just going to share a couple stories of how powerful it's been in my life and other people's lives. I love dealing with negative emotions such as fear and anger and sadness because they really transform people, because we are driven by emotions, totally driven by emotions. I had this client come to me who had never driven further than 10 minutes away from their home. For 30 years, had strategically lived in the same house that was 5 minutes drive to their grocery store, 5-minute drive to their to their work, and so they had never really driven further than 10-15 minutes away from their vicinity of where they lived. Well, they were retiring. They got shit to do. They wanted to do things. They wanted to go places. They wanted to see the world. Problem, it had never left really more than 15 minutes without having anxiety. I should explain that. She was able to drive further than 10-15 minutes, but she had to take, some medication for it and had severe anxiety. And I mean, that's nowhere to live. No way to live, I should say. And so she came to me and said, I'd like to travel. I'd like to, she lived in Canada. I want to travel across Canada and I want to do that. I worked with her during the pandemic and unfortunately wasn't really able to drive further than 15 minutes because they were in lockdown. We were in lockdown. And so she said, I'll let you know within a couple months. Well, she called me 2-3 months later and she had driven 12 hours by herself through the mountains in the dark. This is how powerful this technique is. How could this woman go from, not driving 15 minutes further from her house without having an anxiety attack and now driving through the mountains in the dark, by herself? That alone would make me scared. I started to question if maybe I did too good of a job. But that's how powerful it was. It was just so powerful to see her make that transition. I've had other people come to me, who absolutely have these distorted views in relationship, hate their spouse, hate their estranged parent or whatever, and deal with the emotion of anger and sadness. And within 2-3 weeks, even days, I've had some people within 3 days reconcile because they totally see the viewpoint differently. Plus that negative charge of the emotion that drives you to repel that person is gone. So anyways, this is something I just wanted to share with you guys, a technique that I use and why it's so powerful. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to work with you and to get you on the track of the life that you would like to live and get rid of those negative emotions and all limiting beliefs that are holding you back. And so, yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.